So, hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about airsoft grenades. 40mm gas airsoft grenades to be precise. There's a various different selection I'm going to talk you through today, along with various other bits and pieces that you're probably going to want to know about using airsoft grenades. All in all, they're great bits of kit. There's quite a selection here, as I've already mentioned. But you do need to know a few things before you start using these. There are a number of different pitfalls which I'll talk you through about buying the wrong grenades. Also different things you want to know about how you're going to power these grenades. So you might be using black gas, green gas, CO2, any kind of gas in these grenades, really, provided it's up to the job, and that comes back to our little friend over here. But I'll come on to that later. Also CO2, which is partly responsible for the accident that I had with one of these. First and foremost, when it comes to using airsoft grenades, the one thing you're going to want to know about and really adhere strictly to, no matter how safe you feel, how clever you think you are, one thing I'd always say with these grenades is do one thing, which is use these eye protection. So I'm going to put my eye protection on because I have had an accident in the past, and I really wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I'm not going to go into ins and outs, but I ended up in A&E and it was not a great experience. So avoid that, wear eye protection while you're doing this. So, grenades then. The thing about grenades that you want to know is that they require quite a lot of maintenance, which is where things like these ball bearings and also O-rings come into play. It's worth finding out what size your grenade takes in terms of O-rings and stocking up on the appropriate amount, or buying a sort of selection of O-rings here. Nitrile are the best ones to go for. I'm not 100% certain these are nitrile, to be fair, but they seem pretty sturdy and quite strong, so I'm going to use these and see how I get on. But nitrile are the ones to go for because they tend to take a bit more abuse than the regular O-rings that come with it standard. So the reason I want those, because these work like any other gas firing projectile in airsoft. They take a O-ring and essentially you form a seal with those O-rings inside, and that's what holds your gas in the actual shell. So those parts can get worn down, they can deteriorate, they can misshape. The pressure, the cold temperature of the gas, a number of things can happen to these O-rings, which essentially means over time they deteriorate and need replacing, they get damaged, and you're going to want a supply of them. For these to work reliably, you also need to lube them up. So things like silicone oil. I find that silicone grease also is really good for smearing around the bearings that go inside of these grenades. You want to do that because essentially you will find a much more user-friendly experience in using these grenades if you actually maintain them. A good bit of advice that a friend of mine gave to me, who plays at one of the sites I attend regularly, was that don't lose game time to these. You know, don't spend your day off the field. You know, your day when you're playing off the field in the safe zone trying to fix your airsoft grenades or so your 40mm Moscart, gas grenades, because you're just wasting time, and a lot of this can be prevented by actually properly maintaining them between games. So as you can see, I have a fairly large job ahead of me. I mean, these are already in pretty good shape, but again, I don't want to spend my days when I'm actually playing in the safe zone trying to fix these. So yeah, I'd recommend making sure that these are well serviced before. So you can get a number of different grenades. I'll talk you through the ones I've got here, and I'll be honest, I've forgotten what these ones are called. So I will post that in the description as to what type of grenades these are in terms of the what they're named. So you've got these ones here, which are generally referred to as shower shells. In fact, they're both technically shower shells, but you've got a couple of different variations on these, which are most common, which is the ones here which have the sort of massive kind of well. Now you can get different sizes of these, and obviously depending on what size you pick, you will rain down or shower down a different amount of BBs on your enemies. Personally, and this wasn't how I always felt, I actually preferred these to begin with. But the problem with these is that they don't actually hold BBs very well, and they will just kind of drop out if you turn them upside down. There is a kind of a ring here, which you see, which is supposed to prevent that, but it doesn't. So what I find works best is these, and the reason for that is you can obtain these plugs, which fit perfectly in there and hold all your BBs in place. And also when you pull the trigger, that will fire out and you don't lose any if you turn your gun upside down, or point them about to the ground, or whatever you're going to do, which means that these grenades are going to lose their BBs when you do that. So they're my preference for that reason. You tend to not get as much range out of these, to be fair, as you do out of these, so it's kind of a toss-up between the two. But yeah, if you don't want to spend out loads of money on all these rubber bungs, what you can do is take things like this, which is like a bit of wool, or you can use bubble wrap I've used before, loads of different kinds of stuff that that you can use to plug in the top, and then you fire it out, so you don't have to worry about having to buy more of these. So yeah, they're probably my preference. Great range out of these. I'll also put at the end of the video a few sort of clips of me using my grenade shells. I use them typically in the M79 and also the ICS GLM, which is an awesome bit of kit because it has like rotating barrels. It's like a huge airsoft grenade revolver. It's awesome. So I'll post that at the end of the video. One of the things I'd recommend when it comes to choosing your airsoft grenades, and I chose all metal originally, but got sent for some reason these plastic ones, which if you ever see them, just stay away from these because they are just plainly not up to the job. I did kind of push the limits on these, and they're not rated for CO2, but either way, for the price that these cost me, these were actually £30 each, and for plastic grenade rounds that basically explode when you put CO2 in them, I would stay well away, because any grenade that I buy for my airsoft guns, I want it to be reliable, I want it to be durable, I don't want to worry about it blowing up. I mean, if I put black gas in, would that cause a problem? Are these only rated for green gas? Yeah, this is all that's left of that grenade, because the rest of it, as I mentioned, is toast. So yeah, avoid those. When it comes to actually servicing them, I would recommend that you do the following. I'll just prop the camera here against the shitty, cheap plastic airsoft grenades, which also don't even hold my camera up. There we go. I can hopefully show you what you want to do when you're servicing your grenades. So, the top and bottom, make sure they're not gassed, by the way. You can test that by just pressing the valve. All we want to do is just twist them apart. And a long thread, so this will take a bit of time, but they are under a lot of pressure, so you want a nice long thread. So inside here you have these ball bearings, which basically will hold the top of the sort of the valve stem into place. So what you want to do when it comes to servicing your grenades is a couple of things. You want to make sure that that the rubber seal that you see there, just there around that top cap there, that's not misshapen, it's not beaten up, it's not chewed up, it doesn't need replacing basically, because that's kind of the main seal that keeps your gas in place. So these just sort of lock down the top of it, these ball bearings, and what you want to do is make sure when you put them in, they're all in evenly, they're all greased up, and they're good for action. So what I would recommend doing in terms of maintaining these is get a little cotton stick, cotton bud, that's the name for it, not cotton stick, that's ridiculous. And generously apply some silicone grease, and basically just work it just around them, so you've got a little bit of lube there that kind of helps them stay in place, and also just means they won't wear down too much. You'll generally get a better life out of them. So yeah, make sure they're all really well lubed. I'm quite generous with this as well normally, so this is not a lot, but also get a bit around the O-ring. If you really want to be overkill, I'd use a combination of both the grease and also the grenade oil. And then with the oil, what you want to do is just put it around there. There we go, the springs drops out. I'll pick that up in a second. And just put it on the top there. So, grab your spring if it falls out, and just shove it back into place. In fact, that's not the best place for it if you want to put it back in. The best place is actually in the base of the grenade, around the sort of valve stem, because it's a two-piece kind of valve. Just poke that back into its hole there, and it will just sit in place nicely. Then put that inside there, and just make sure that those ball bearings don't fall out or fall anywhere funny. Now, the best way to seat these is to push that plunger or that pin at the bottom, and then push the top of it down. I find it can be a bit of a fiddle, but you will go in. like that. So then we've done all that. Take the top again. What I'd like to do at this point is make sure the O-ring around the top of this is really properly lubricated, because again, that's going to be tightened up. It could wear. It's just best to make sure that you look after it. So just run your lube all around there, so you've got a nice even coating. What I also do as well, just for good measure and keep the threads not chewed up and just easy to use, just run a line down the thread, so as you turn it, you keep all the silicone grease, or silicone oil in this case, going around. So it generally makes it easier to screw and unscrew, and just means you look after it for longer. So that goes on the top there. You'll notice this is actually missing that band there. Not that they do much good anyway. In fact, another point worth mentioning, what I do with these is put electrical tape around the top, just so that when I come to use them, I'll tear that off and then put it in my grenade launcher, remembering to keep it facing skywards. So that's now good to use. Make sure this is fully pushed up to the top. It's got tension behind it, so otherwise it won't gas up and you'll hear the gas hissing as you try to fill it. So this should now fill up. In fact, before I do that, one last thing, just a little drop on the filler, and then you're good to gas. And what I'll do, very quick squirt, because I'm not going to use this for a few days, so I'm just putting enough in to store the gas and to keep it under pressure. So that shouldn't really go off when I push that. Obviously, push it too hard, it will. But that's now pretty much service, with the exception of that lowering there. But it's good to go. So that's how you'd maintain your basic gas shower grenade. And there's not much difference between these and one of these, which is the one we talked about, which I can't remember the name for. So again, unscrew your top. Top comes out. Very, very, very similar design. I've just dropped a ball bearing out of it, so don't do that. Again, another reason to use at home is that you will lose these on the field. So again, just do it at home. These ball bearings, by the way, you can pick up from Amazon, eBay. The sizes that you generally find in airsoft grenades vary between these, which look like 3mm. Also, you find larger ones like you saw in this, which I believe is either a 4 or 5mm. So you can buy those in the hundreds for literally a few pounds. So definitely worth stocking up on those, so that you have got plenty to use. Again, it would be the same process for one of these, albeit there's one less ball bearing on this design, but it would be exactly the same process as you saw on the last grenade to maintain these. Now, I mentioned gas earlier. Gas is important, so choose your gas wisely. The black gas that I use, the neutral stuff, isn't too expensive. I actually have started using Garda instead. A lot more expensive, but actually I find it works better, it's louder. But I've actually moved on a step further from that as well. And what I like to use with my grenades, this is why I recommend the metal ones, is this. It's a CO2 charger. So what this will do, you'll put your CO2 capsule inside it, one of these, and just use it like a regular gas filler. It's not for the faint-hearted. CO2 is really high pressure, hence that grenade over there exploded. If you put it in things like pistol mags, you can pretty much guarantee to in some way damage the pistol mag or the gun. So use it on things which are rated for CO2. That is pretty much all from me at this point, and concludes what is actually my first video. So look forward to more in the series. Going to be doing them ad hoc, hoping to grow a channel. So this is very much the raw first version of my videos. In fact, there's one thing I missed. This is the only time it's acceptable in airsoft to use shit BBs, because you're going to be firing so many out of these, and the fact there's no real barrels to damage or guns to jam as such, it's totally okay to use cheap, shitty BBs, and all the more fun when you kill your enemies with the shitty, cheap BBs that you pick up down the market or online. So yeah, that's all from me. Hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to more coming forward soon. Thanks, bye bye. So today I'm going to be testing the ICS MGL with CO2 40mm Moscart rounds. So here we go. For those of you that are wondering why I love my grenade launchers, this would be the reason.